Hey, this is Travis Gafford, the double lift expert, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
6 days ago, I published a video about the conflict of interest in the double lift from Team Liquid to TSM trade. Since then, we talked about it on Summoning Insight, a number of my talk shows. I've made a number of tweets following up and clarifying some of my thoughts on the matter and how it's developed, including obviously plenty of jokes because, you know what, that's my style. I think it's funny. This is the issue that we're now going to get to, is it's time to make another video that now clarifies some of the response from the TSM management, some of the further statements they've made regarding this topic, even further evidence that's come up, and obviously community reaction. So in terms of the TSM people and the fans of TSM as well, go on, keep deflecting by trying to make this about the literal trade and claiming that we're saying, me and Monty and others, that this was poaching and that we have evidence of it and that we know it happened, as opposed to what we have numerous times now outlined. It was even the context we put the original statements in. I even said in my video, I am not saying that these things happened. I'm saying the fact that it's possible it could is the problem. So to me, this is not about the literal trade. It is simply a prime, and because it's a massive blockbuster trade, very topical example of concerns about conflict of interest with teams and players. That is what this is about. The conflict of interest being allowed to exist in the league and within teams. Neither Monty nor myself have made any allegations, based on the comments I've seen from him at least, saying Doublelift was definitely poached. My main point is that those rules are essentially unenforceable, and thus we can never know, especially because it's a close personal relationship. Essentially, to get anything close to evidence, you'd need to either bug their house and record them talking about this, or you'd have to have one of them snitch on each other, which for obvious reasons they wouldn't do at this point in time. Now, Monty's take, not mine, is that Riot should have blocked the trade. He thinks it just shouldn't even go through. I don't actually think so, and I didn't at the time, and you've never heard me express that, because I don't really know how you could do that if you actually allowed the same conflict of interest to exist when Doublelift was on Team Liquid and now he's on TSM. Like, to me, if it was going to be blocked, like, you should have essentially punished or made some sort of ruling the second he was in a relationship with Leena in Team Liquid. So I think once the precedent's set, it doesn't make sense to, like, reverse the rule. I do think, though, that Riot should set a new precedent about conflict of interest and demand that teams do not have them, if possible, legally. Now, that, in that scenario, it's not that you would punish people after the fact, it's that it would remove these situations from happening. I mean, we don't even have to consider or worry about something like that being the case. Then, you have Leena in a video where she was with Pokemon or whatever, suggesting that we should have been respectful and reached out to her. Yet we didn't need to, and nor do we now, since that was never what we were saying. We were never trying to find out details about the trade. Also, by that logic, why didn't she reach out to Monty or me right after his initial comments, before I made any video, to clarify what our concerns are? What are we worried about? Is there any way we could work on some concept where we discuss this matter and go into the... No, that never happened whatsoever. She has all our contacts with her. She follows me on Twitter. She has me on Skype. I'm sure she has a bunch of us on Instagram, etc. She can definitely contact Monty. Did she do that? No, of course she didn't. As far as I know, I don't actually technically know what's going on, but I'm almost certain she hasn't contacted Monty based on the information I've heard. So, have you never heard the idiom, what's good for the goose is good for the gander? If I'm supposed to do it, you're going to hold me up to that standard. I can just spin it back on you and hold you to that standard. Then, you got the fact that she literally implied that we're community figures that she's worked with, that we all need to work together because we're going to be around and she's going to be around and TSM's going to be around. So for the betterment of the industry, we all need to work together. Yet she never made any attempt at all to follow her own fucking advice. And by the way, best prescribement apparently, almost like she doesn't actually believe it, guys. And this is just a bullshit, arbitrary rule she's setting up to then claim we failed to reach the standard when she hasn't done it herself. And that's actually essentially clarifying one of the central themes about the way this backlash has happened from TSM and their fans. That's an absolute fucking disgrace, and particularly from Leena and TSM management, which is that they've tried to make it all about us. They're not making it about playing defense for their particular rule. They're all on the offense, trying to kill us and our credibility. So they're suggesting that we only did this for clout, internet fucking clout. By the way, you get downvoted, you dumb fuck, on Reddit if you talk about this shit. That with trying to stop the trade itself. Now, Monty is, I'm not personally. I'm commenting on the fact that since the trade's going to go ahead, on my watch, I'm not just going to sit back and go, well, I'm not going to say anything about the obvious fucking bullshit behind this and conflict of interest that's involved. No, you got away with doing the trade. Congrats, love. You got an AD carry now. You know what, though? I'm going to make sure people know what the fuck is going on in this scenario and that isn't right the way this went down. Or the angle that we did it to be mean to her. Well, you know what? Which is it? What, it's all three at the same time, is it? Well, that's just fucking convenient for you, isn't it? That all three of these things come together. It can't just be that there's a conflict of interest. And now that it's resulted in a potential literal shift of power within the LCS that might decide the next fucking champion, maybe even a team that goes deep in Worlds, it couldn't be that we want to address that and the conflict of interest and forget even TSM and Team Liquid, try and make Riot actually enforce some sort of anti-conflict of interest rules. It couldn't be that, could it? No, it has to be all about that. So, what is it? In this scenario, do you just get to make huge speculative claims like that, which essentially regard our psychology, our motivations, and then simply hope that if you take a shotgun approach and you fire at everything, something's going to hit us? Well, fuck that. Point out that I have ginger hair at this point in time. Point out I got fired years ago. Hey, say that at one point in time, a few years ago, I was maybe a bit fat. Hey, if you want to just smear people and say shit about them and try and throw as much mud as you can at the wall, just go for it, right? Would make as much sense in this current pattern you're taking. Because once again, you are an absolute fucking hypocrite. To clarify, just in case people don't understand still, I have no issue with her actually doing that, by the way. As in, I don't like it, but I don't think like any sort of punishment should happen to her or anything should take place. Because she hasn't broken a law. She is free to say what she thinks, what her opinion is, what her take on it is. But the same is afforded me. It is, of course, something that, listen, she can't do shit to me about it, because it's just my opinion, despite her and TSM's best efforts, but I can say what I want, she can say what she wants, and then people will judge us accordingly. Now, what clout are we talking about? As I said, you get fucking downvoted if you put critical stuff about TSM. Do you make much more money off it? I mean, some of the videos might get big views, but we're talking about making like $15 extra, $30 extra in a world where in the same time it takes me to make that video, I can make different content that pays 2 to 5 to 10 times more than that does. I have an incredible set of diverse income streams. I don't need to just make videos about fucking TSM. And as I said, I don't want to stop the trade. And as far as the last aspect goes, the idea that we're being mean to her, I'm not being mean to her. I'm not being mean to her as a person. If this was a private relationship, or there was no conflict of interest, I couldn't give a fuck less who she dates. Also, let's just be real for a second. Are you all just going to gaslight me that I'm a Doublelift hater now or something? Doublelift has been one of my favourite players since the beginning of my interest in League of Legends in Season 2. He's one of the first people I ever interviewed and put mad amount of hours, as someone who didn't even play, that never even watched League of Legends, into the fucking interview to do it all. I've done numerous, 3 long-form reflection/grill type interviews with him. I've had him on my shows, all sorts of things. This is someone where I even like him as a person and his story. Like, I can relate to all the struggles he's been through and how he's had to struggle to mature and to become a man and to meet the expectations himself and the community has. I've had numerous conversations with this guy in private, in person. I've tried to help him with his mentality where I could. I'm not claiming I'm like his mentor or whatever, but where I could, I tried to just pass on a few little things that have helped me over the years, documentaries and things, or ways of framing what's happening to you and how you can get back to the top, or how someone saying you're selfish isn't necessarily correct if you take responsibility and you carry the game, blah, 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 etc., etc. In fact, I'll show you right now. When he was eliminated from the World Championships he played in TSM Season 7, I sent him private messages in which I actually tried to buoy his spirits up and actually make him bounce back and not just be torn apart in the fucking crucible, by the way, of shithead TSM fans who were the ones now attacking people. I'll show you now the ones that I sent him over 2 different mediums, by the way, to make sure he got these messages after he was eliminated from the Season 7 World Championship in 2017, the one where he got a lot of criticism and essentially, by the way, cost him his fucking job on TSM. So look, here we are on Skype. Skip down to here, Wednesday, November the 1st, which I think is like a couple, it's right after the Worlds itself had ended and all the like hatred had died down, and so hopefully he wasn't just avoiding social media and all these apps and he wasn't just too raw at this point in time. And I messaged him here at 6 a.m. in the morning my time, and I said, you had 5 splits without an LCS title, now you have 3, as in 3 LCS titles. These Worlds won't matter if you do something special at another. Then, well, let's look in here. I sent them a message on Twitter similarly. This is right after they got eliminated. Like the day after. I said, you can still be a great player internationally. That's the kind of the message I sent to Doublelift. And that's what my feelings are regarding Doublelift. Hell, if you go on my Instagram, I've even literally, for free, fucking modelled his signature clothing line for a Teo. Just because I like the guy, I like the clothing, I wanted to show it off, and I thought it was a fun scenario to do, right? Show that, yeah, this is a guy I'm repping, I'm riding with this guy, I've always been with him from the very beginning, I've been following this game. So, in light of how hard a life he's had, I'm happy he has a relationship. And you know what? I hope it's meaningful and it's satisfying. It's one that brings him joy in his life. But that doesn't make any of this TSM shit fine. That doesn't make the conflict of interest fine. It doesn't make it something I'm not going to address. So don't get distracted by the bullshit. Because that's what it is. It's a distraction. It's a deflection. TSM fans hated me and Monty literally 6 years ago. And for what reason? Because we didn't think their team was the best. We thought they were the second or third best. That is why. And we criticised where they had flaws. That's literally it. Sure, you're going to think, well, wasn't there that whole Reggie and Loco with Monty beef? That wasn't to do with me. That was to do with Reggie and Loco and Monty and some shit over him coaching CLG. Then, if you look on this podcast where Leena went, literally like a day ago, and discussed all this with fucking Pokimane of all people. All right, great, but she's like the new community hub arbitrator, is she? And on it, she makes this utterly inane point that we're only bringing this up now to stop the trade, or implying we're doing it to like bully a poor defenseless girl who is just trying to find love. You're not that thing you just explained in this circumstances. You are the president of a huge esports organization valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't get to hide behind that bullshit shield. Also, initially implying, but even overtly saying, that if anything it would be more of a conflict of interest when Doublelift was in Team Liquid than now, so why bring it up now? That is probably the stupidest angle imaginable, because essentially, within the premise, you are sort of admitting that it is kind of a conflict of interest, right? By the way, provably and objectively is a conflict of interest. And then you're attempting to use the mechanism that if you did something shady or potentially shady months ago, then somehow it's all right now because we didn't call you out months ago. I don't know what you know about the way these things work, but there's not a 2-month statute of limitations on this fuckhead. So why do it? Why bring this shit up? Why talk this way? Because it's effective. When they do this to other people, not to me, it puts a fear of God in those people. It makes them back off even what they're saying or apologise. It makes them even think twice about criticising TSM in the future. Not me, mate. I'm not built like that. It just fuels me. I don't need inspiration to make esports content. I have literally the proof of thousands of videos on this channel alone. But I'm hella inspired to be up TSM's ass with a microscope on the daily from now on. So then you have the fans who were citing Riot's investigation, and also she referenced it herself, which cleared them. Now, here's what's interesting. Since my last video, this is why it's cool actually, I've got to do a follow-up. Thanks, Leena and TSM. You really inspired me to do it. I was going to just let the matter lie. They'd already been shown on some other people's content. But we'll go ahead and look at some of that shit, shall we? So here we have a confidential document, the summary report regarding the poaching and tampering and the transfer of Iliang Doublelift Peng. Now, I'll skip past the first parts. And we'll just go to this part here. It talks about there's going to be a trade. And then, look, we'll go to the third sentence here. It says, based on the personal relationship between Doublelift and Leena, the league, before approving the trade on the documents, opened an inquiry to determine whether any LCS rules had been violated, including, but not limited to, Rule 14.4.9 of the 2020 LCS rule set, the LCS rules, entitled No Poaching or Tampering, more commonly colloquially known as the poaching rules. Now let's skip forwards, okay? Because when we go down here, you're going to find some very interesting shit. This is the part that's very interesting, right? You go down to this part here. It's worth noting that the LCS does not maintain conflict of interest rules related to personal relationships that do not involve League or Riot Games employees. The League's current stance is that the conflict of interest rules related to team members are best left to teams as the employer of any affected individuals. Thus, this inquiry did not consider whether the relationship between Doublelift and Leena currently causes or would cause in the future any conflicts of interest. The league believes that since the trade was ultimately authorised by the appropriate individuals, specifically Andy Dinn for TSM, the owner, and Steve Arnesen for Team Liquid, and another owner, that any conflicts are being considered and addressed, if necessary, by the relevant teams. So what it essentially says there is that as part of the investigation, from the get-go, they were not considering, because they do not have rules for, hence why we're bringing up that's a problem, then maybe they should have rules, for if there's personal relationship conflicts of interest, unless it's actually someone who works for League of Legends or Riot Games themselves. Otherwise, they leave it to TSM and Team Liquid to worry about whether there's a conflict of interest and to deal with it at that point in time. Yet, even after this document was sent out, Leena, including on that Pokemon show, keeps intimating that they did an investigation on the conflict of interest in TSM. That's the implication she's making by saying how in-depth and how intimate this investigation was and how serious it was. She's trying to make you think, accept all but saying it, that they did investigate the conflict of interest that she had in her personal relationship. So I'll ask you this, who's lying here? Riot Games or Leena? You can pick on this one. Then we have the fans who think that Schalke guy's tweet is proof that they didn't poach Doublelift. So here we have a tweet from Tim Reichart, who is the managing director of Schalke 04, and obviously this is related to the Upset potential trade that I pointed out in the last video. There were Discord screenshots where she was telling that she tried to approach these people and try and get them. So out comes this guy, Tim Reichart, managing director of Schalke, and he embeds Leena's comment here, where she's talking about my video under the fake news lol. By the way, notice she misspells my alias with 2 O's. Another detail, when Reginald back in the day blacklisted On Gamers, he also called Summoner's Insight. These people are genuinely dense, by the way. Like, they are actually idiots. So here's what this Tim Reichart says. He says, in 2018, TSM approached us with an offer for Upset, which we declined. Path approached me directly, and I have no reason to believe that Upset was contacted by them. Good luck in the summer split, TSM. Now, if you think that proves that TSM didn't poach Doublelift, and that's not even something to be concerned about, that is a fucking galaxy brain take and a half. First of all, you can't prove something that didn't happen. You can't prove that it didn't happen. And that has been, by the way, a key corollary, look that word up, dumb fox, of my entire point about conflict of interest and poaching, that the inability to prove that these things happened makes them essentially unenforceable, unless someone massively fucks up or you get super lucky, like someone comes forwards and confesses. Secondly, this is not about the Team Liquid and TSM trade. It's about them trying to acquire Upset in the off-season. What does it do to have with the TSM trade? I put it forwards to show that, first of all, conflict of interest exists, and now we even have a track record of the owner of the president of the team, essentially implying she's been poaching and breaking the poaching rules. This is also, by the way, another example where I did not say that they poached Upset. I did not say that they definitely did it. I did not say that I think it happened. I pointed out that Leena's own words said she approached players. The transcript of it literally said that she tried to actually approach lots of EU players. Those are her words. Later, she came out in that twitlonger that the Tim Reichart guy had embedded there and said that it wasn't true and she'd only approached the organisations. Then why not just say why not just say I approached lots of organisations about players? Add a couple more words in to actually clarify what you fucking mean. You said the opposite of that. You said that you had approached players. You said that. Your words, take responsibility. You are the president of TSM, and this is a massive company. Then I'll play devil's advocate for a second. I even think, because she's so fucking dense, that actually she did mean to say that she'd approached the orgs, and she just basically colloquially said, like, we approached the players, and then the implication is like, but the way you approach players is obviously they're arguing we did it all by the book, but this is a private Discord and you're all fans. It's not really private, but it's a Discord and you're the fans, so it's just shorthand, and I'm not in a court of law, right? But here's the problem. It's still in public, and in a case like this, hence why I pointed it out, it lays the grounds that you have a past track record of potentially not understanding the poaching rules, as I said, or maybe even having flaunted them. And then add in that she also called me and Inven fake news, right? First of all, I'm one of the most established, respected, and prolific journalists this industry has or ever will have in it. Literally, I won the Journalist of the Year award at the Esports Industry Awards 3 years ago, and then I was the runner-up the following year. Secondly, She is now the stupidest president to have called the press fake news just because they don't like them. So congrats on something, I guess. So we'll get later to why what she did is dangerous, even though it was partly a joke, hence she's put the lol on the end. Now let me just very briefly, because this isn't a video about upset going to TSM, just address the Tim Reichardt guy, right? So Tim Reichardt is a guy I'm actually very familiar with in terms of his role in esports, because he is basically from the original royalty of European esports. He was one of the brothers who was... You guys won't know this because he's from Quake. He was a Quake World player back in the late 1990s, and he founded the team Shroet Commando, now known as SK Gaming, who's still playing LEC, with his brothers Ralph Reichardt, Griff, and his younger brother, I think, Benjamin Kane, the star player of the team. Now, what's hilarious is, allegedly, there's conflict of interest all over the place with this family. Like, his brother Ralph, who still works as a top guy within ESL now, supposedly owned shares in SK Gaming, the team that he'd founded decades ago now, all while he was running a tournament organizer, ESL, that was hosting tournaments that SK competed in and even did well in, including World Championship events for those particular games. He himself, actually, there was some news where it said like he'd had to sell his shares when they then got the Brazilian team, I think in 2016. I think it was something along those lines. So I don't really give a fuck what Tim Reichardt says, even though it's not particularly relevant to this matter. I don't particularly trust his credibility. Now, the fan base of TSM is absolute shit. We all know that. That goes without saying. But in an area that you won't know, it's an open secret behind the scenes in the esports industry that TSM fans will mass downvote and even privately brigade threads that are at all critical of TSM. Thus, the subreddit becomes an echo chamber, and as a result, even mild criticism is treated as extreme, unjustified hate. But here's the problem. I can take the downvotes. They only, for me, motivate me to publish more of my criticisms, because you know what? I've got carte blanche now. You've already downvoted me. You can't downvote me twice on one account. So I'll do what others cannot then, or feel like they cannot, or don't have the conviction to do. I'll be the guy who carries the mast, and I'll go on a war against TSM, and I'll expose the shit that they do, right? So then, how about this? Let their actions towards me and their words about me show who they are as people. Because they can't touch me for 1 second. They'll lie and say that I lie. They'll say my credibility is shot when it's some of the most legit in the history of esports. They'll say I made something up when I didn't. They'll say I don't have information when they cannot know what information I have. They'll claim that the information I have from private sources that I cannot reveal is because I lied about it. But this is the thing. No matter what they do, in the same way as their words will be what you can judge them by, I'll never lie about TSM. I'll never lie about how good their players are. And I'll never do it on the basis that I dislike the org intensely again. That's who I am, and that's the standard I hold myself to. And as you've already heard, the only standards TSM has is double standards, fittingly. These are people who think they can lash out and pull shady shit behind the scenes, and not only are they so entitled, they think they won't be called out for it, but then when they are called out for it, they can double, triple, quadruple down and respond in whatever manner they please. Personally, I didn't even plan to address this topic initially beyond when Monty would have asked me about it on Summoning Insight. Monty was the one who made some comments and some tweets, but then I got those Discord screenshots, which gave credible grounds that not only could they, but they even may have attempted to poach players by their own admission, so I publicised those. Ever since then, and our SI episode, TSM have basically been throwing a fucking temper tantrum behind the scenes, and if you only knew some of the people they've been contacting and trying to manipulate to fuck with over this particular topic and the fact that the information is out there. If TSM had simply made a statement about it, they could refute or rebut anything they wanted and left it at that, it would have been fine. That would have been the end of it for me. I wouldn't even have made my video until I got the screenshots, and afterwards, that also would have been the end of it. But no. They had to come out and call me fake news and start their machinations out of sight, and hence it hasn't stopped. And guess what? Spoiler, guys, it's not gonna stop. It's gonna get way worse than this. You have no idea. So similarly, I posted the info about the Riot investigation, not in a video. I didn't do an article about it. I did it on Twitter because Dom had already shown it on stream, or I think he showed it on stream after that, and I hadn't made a video about it. Like, I just wanted the info out there to whoever cared. I was ready to let this topic go. I'd said most of what I needed to say. I clarified the main point in my original video. I was on to other projects. I work on tons of... So the idea that like 120 of those are just on TSM and stuff, it just doesn't even fucking logistically make sense, and it beggars belief that an idiot would even make that straw man. So this gaslighting that I'm making tons of money from TSM and making people mad and putting controversial opinions, or that's my main focus, is abjectly both a lie and absurd. I could literally buy a brand new Lamborghini off the fucking lot wherever I choose in the world at the end of this year if I didn't mention the name TSM another time this year. I focus on what I choose to focus on. That is the incredible luck, the incredible grace almost that I've been able to experience with where I've got to in my career. So good news though, guys, you've got my attention now. Now you're going to get more of my attention than you would have had before. Then again, it's the same old, isn't it? Which is exactly one of my other big problems with all of this, is that I personally had years ago, literally 3 or 4 years ago, moved on from legitimately despising TSM the org. I play with the meme for fun, sure, if it's a talk show, listen, local, whatever, because it's so well established, it's a fun little hot button topic to go back to, right? But I have done interviews with their players, including Doublelift, Bjergsen, Reginald. I've had them on my shows, including Doublelift, fucking Path, all sorts of people, Cobby now. And I've even had private conversations with key TSM figures. As I alluded to, I met up with someone in the off-season. They were picking my brain about what they could or should do. I advised them to pick up Youngbark. I said to pick up Dardoch as a jungler if you could. Like, we had a back and forth about things. They told me some information. By the way, some of those things they've since come out and publicly lied about. Like, they've said the opposite publicly about who they were going to sign and where and how they went down from what I'd heard and what I'd corroborated elsewhere. So yes, guess what? TSM has a bunch of serial fucking liars, and when they're caught lying, they just double down and say they're not lying, and then the fanbase defends them and downvotes all the people showing that they're lying, and therefore the information doesn't get out there, they seem to win, right? Or do they? Let's see how this one plays out. The last chapter in this story has not been told. So why was it then that I now wasn't against TSM and in fact was actively working with them at times? Because when they got in trouble over some shit in CSGO or the PEA scandal in late 2016, Leena herself reached out to me and told me I'm an influencer and TSM's an organisation, and they now understand that that's the relationship we have, and that since they're going to be in the space and I'm going to be in the space, we should find a way to work together, or words to that effect. And would I like to do an interview with Reginald about one of these topics? At the time, I actually thought to myself, you know what? Props. I thought, how mature. Maybe I've misjudged this individual. Actually, maybe something changed since then, or maybe we just got off on the wrong foot initially, or whatever it could be in that way, even though what they did was fairly egregious and they didn't particularly apologise publicly. So on my literal fucking Christmas vacation to South Korea, which I'd spent megabucks on, I twice got up in the middle of the night, because Reginald was on fucking Pacific time, and did an interview with Reginald to help him speak to the CSGO community and offset some of the damage that was being done by his own CSGO players, wrecking him publicly and turning the fans on TSM, the organisation. I essentially championed and helped allow a champion of TSM to battle against negative publicity about TSM, or set the record straight as it was. I'll even point out, by the way, I actually, and to this day on some level, still feel bad for Reggie with the whole Leena situation, since I'm sure it's incredibly awkward, and quite frankly, that's why if you go and look, you won't find, to this date, any jokes on my Twitter or on my shows about Leena dating Doublelift, or about the fact that Reggie got cooked or whatever. I haven't said any of that shit, despite some mean, but at times I won't deny, hilarious memes going around. I mean, there's a certain Infinity War Soulstone one that springs to mind. You haven't seen me retweet that. You haven't seen me comment on that. Similarly, when the situation happened with Dom, where he basically outed him and Veteran, between the two of them, that a TSM player had fucked the ex-girlfriend of another active teammate within the squad, I didn't want to address it. Go watch the Listen Loco episode. Go ask Loco. I even told Loco we shouldn't address it. It was inappropriate. And that actually anyone who was, implying Veteran, someone I work with, had stepped over the bounds by going that hard on it. Family is a line you don't cross. This situation is about conflict of interest, not their relationship. If she left esports or Doublelift retired, do you imagine I would still be going on about their relationship? No, you would have never heard me mention it. Why is it so key, though? Let's get down to this really important element. Why is it so key, as I addressed earlier, I would talk about this, that she attacked my credibility, that she called me fake news? Because there's nothing fake about me. As a journalist, credibility is the currency of my profession. It is the lifeblood. Without it, you are nothing. I'm going on 19 years now as a professional in the esports industry. I was here long before TSM and fucking Leena were, when they were back doing all sorts of stupid shit. Oh wait, they're still doing stupid shit right now. Probably need to narrow that down, right? And so a hit to my credibility, including implying I'm lying, literally threatens my livelihood, my job, my profession, my status within my job. It literally could stop me putting food on the table if you're successful with your smear campaign. And so I treat it like that. I see, when you make those statements, I see you reaching out and taking food out of my child's mouth, or taking a roof off their house, or taking fucking the heating out of it, or making it so that in the future, their name will be tarnished forever because you've lied as a massive organisation about what's gone on. And all this because you're mad you couldn't get away with some bullshit and were called on it. Oh no, wait a second, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Because you did get away with it, and then you got called on it. You petulant fucking child. You want to play God with other people's lives and families and livelihoods over that. And this isn't something new, by the way, guys. This is TSM's modus operandi, their MO. There was beef going to the next level back in 2014, if you remember the drama back then. And it's not, by the way, because I compared Reggie's character as a person to the character of Caesar. No, that's not why it was, because that was actually in the show where he addressed what I'm now about to talk about. No, I made that comparison while explaining that he had privately blacklisted OnGamers, the website I worked for at the time and that hosted Summoning Insight, from TSM interviews. And that was at a time when it didn't affect me personally, because I'd actually already been blacklisted by TSM privately going back into the previous year. I just didn't bother bringing it up because I didn't think it was that particularly relevant. It was some private information. But in blacklisting OnGamers from interviews, they were essentially massively affecting Travis Gafford's livelihood. Interviews were his main thing back then. And so I was standing up for Travis and his career, a colleague of mine, because that's the right thing to do when you're on a team and when someone matters to you, and it's the principle that matters. So the implication, by the way, if you're not getting it yet, of them doing that blacklist isn't just to say we're not doing interviews anymore. When you expressly tell the person, it's one thing if privately you just decline the interviews, nothing we can do about that. If you go and you tell my employer that you're blacklisting OnGamers from interviews in all contexts, what you're telling OnGamers, both in some way directly, but certainly the subtext says this, is that they should, or at least incentivized, to fire me so that Travis can get his precious interviews. Indeed, I was actually fired under questionable circumstances a few months later for a joke relating to TSM. Anyone looking at the tweet that I made, by the way, where I called someone retarded jokingly, and which, as you see here, I have publicly and privately apologised for, not because jokes are not allowed, or that was a reasonable thing for them to do as a company, TSM and OnGamers, but because when I got to know Wild Turtle's personality a bit more, I just realised it's just too mean to that particular person. He's actually a very lovely guy and seemingly a very delicate person as well, so I didn't want that to do some sort of psychic damage to this guy, hence why I'm now showing you at this point in time. So, do you think that tweet, by the way, is totally unacceptable? Like, that's if you just don't like that, you should be banned. That's outrageous. How dare you? Oh my god. That's unacceptable. If you believe that, right? Good news. You're about to become a massive fucking hypocrite unless you turn against TSM with me now. Because on TSM's own YouTube channel, they have a video to this day that at the time of this recording is still on the channel that is way beyond that joke tweet. It's one where Reginald, the owner of TSM, in a vlog in early 2012, 8 years ago, says that they've been getting raped by European teams and calls Moscow 5 a word that is often touted as a slur against homosexuals. Now imagine the organisation and the people who would not only put that video up, but leave it up for 8 years, all the while telling their sponsors about their massive social media reach and their media publication platform and probably even directing them to the fucking YouTube channel. Imagine one of those sponsors had ever actually done a deep dive and found that. How does that represent esports and League of Legends? Because it's not just even a player, it's the fucking owner that you're negotiating with saying that shit in there. They're going to think, get me the fuck out of here. I don't want to be associated with those values in this modern political climate. So TSM has been trying to use disparate and irrelevant factoids to disprove something, in the case of Leena, that she has not even come close to disproving. Why did she do it then? Because she turns the fans against me, she paints a picture that she's refuted or proven me wrong, constantly pivoting and deflecting by going on the attack or reframing the narrative as being about her and her relationship and how some people can't just leave us alone, and how childish that is. How fucking childish. And even worse, that actually sets back women in this industry years, in my opinion. Because I've known some amazing women in this industry with incredible character, work ethic, performance levels, who were damn good at their jobs. And I tell you what, they sure as hell didn't pull out the fucking poppy eyes and start crying every time something didn't go their way and they were throwing a temper tantrum. So shout out to the real ones out there. Now, the reason it's so key that she attacked my livelihood like that, and even that they have a track record of harassing me in terms of my work and others that I work with or care about, and who, quite frankly, in many cases have been too scared to come forwards because they don't have the kind of conviction that I do and willingness to battle. Well, you know what, guys? You guys don't need to, because I got you on this one. This hasn't ended, and it won't. You want to attack me in that manner? Well, I accept your declaration of war and right back at you. Remember at all times in this holy war that not only had you fixed the major issue previously, but it wouldn't even have come to this if you just stayed within bounds this time. From now on, it's fuck TSM all day, every day. I'll never lie or be unfair to their players outside of jokes, but the org is metaphorically in my sights for good now. For example, they might have been a partner team in Flashpoint, my CSGO tournament that I hope will turn around the future of the industry, but that will never happen on my watch. Likewise, their players will not appear on my shows, any of them, while I'm on those shows. It's time players understood what it means to wear that jersey and to co-sign this bullshit behaviour with your association and your further continued promotion of that brand and what it represents. I used to think that these people in TSM, the management people, were just selfish idiots. Now I see that they are tangible evil who have harmed and will continue to harm others, including those I care about, in this industry. Well, you know what? I'm their reckoning. You called down the thunder, now reap the whirlwind. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Dean Tanglis, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, Tobias Bernasconi, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my boy Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA. Do you want teasers? Who are the guests on the upcoming talk shows, interviews I have? Maybe you want to take part in one of those Patreon donator discussions with me. Well, for any of the above perks and more, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.